Junk. Bill. Credit card. $250 million? I inherited $250 million? I haven't spent the $250 I got last week. Hello friends, welcome back to the show. So glad to see you once again. And if you're new here, I'm glad you showed up, because this is the show that you've been looking for, where we go back about 20 years and look at TV shows that we grew up on as kids. And right now I'm in a series talking about the new Batman adventures. So if this sounds like something that you might be into, please click the subscribe button down below. And you know what? While you're down there, go ahead and hit like, because I know you're going to like it. Because today we're talking about Joker's Millions, which originally aired on February 21st, 1998.
$250 million?
Now, Joker was featured in the first episode, Holiday Nights, but this is really a Joker-centric episode in this. And boy, does it take a turn for the weird. But we'll talk all about that right after our 60-second rundown of the episode. Here we go. Joker and Harley pull a job, and we find out that they're broke and don't have enough money for weapons, and Joker gets away. Harley gets captured, and Joker goes back to his crummy apartment and doesn't have any money and needs to pull a job or something, and he gets a letter that he has inherited $250 million from King Barlow, even though they are very hated criminal mastermind bosses up against each other. So he gets all this money, goes on a spending spree, and buys all this great stuff, and he's all happy, and he hires a fake Harley in there, and he is off and running. And then he finds out that the IRS wants taxes collected on the money for inheriting that. And so he doesn't have the money to pay that because he's already spent most of the money, and finds out that King Barlow has actually given him fake money that is now he has to pay back. And so he goes on to pull one last job to try to pay back everybody. And in the meantime, he is captured by Batman, and Harley doesn't like that he hired a fake Harley to replace her. Ooh.
I'm free, I'm rich, and I'm loving it.
Now, before we get too far into this episode, I do want to say that one of my complaints about the new Adventures of Batman is that I miss the title cards. I miss the structured kind of 1940s style title cards describing the episode, and a separate little plate that was animated, not animated, but drawn for that. This one, although doesn't have a true title card per se, they did incorporate the title into the beginning of the episode, which I thought was kind of neat, but I still miss the old title cards. Now, this episode deals with a theme that I don't know if it's really been explored too much throughout the show. In many of my reviews, I've talked about how it bothers me often when a criminal is just motivated by greed, just wanting more money. He's just going to rob a bank or rob the mint just to get more cash. But this one actually kind of goes about that in a different way, because they establish right from the beginning that Harley and Joker are broke.
Well, that was a complete fiasco.
They don't have enough money for extra bullets. They don't have enough money for the fluid in Joker's gas flower thing. They run out of gas. I mean, all these things that criminals never have to deal with. And we show Joker go back to his apartment, which is just kind of run down and crummy, and he's behind in his rent.
By the way, you're 2 weeks late with your rent.
Sue me.
I truly can't think of another situation where that has been established. Usually we see criminals living this very glamorous lifestyle because they've got all this legal money, or they're rich in some sort. No matter whether or not they're able to pull off the job, it always seems like they go back to this huge layer, and there's all this stuff, and they have all this equipment and endless funds to create the things that they need to pull off this caper and buy weapons and hire guys and do all this stuff. And here we get to see Joker really down and out. And I know that was just a setup to sell this idea of Joker inheriting the money, but still, it was a neat way of establishing that.
Yeah, you're hungry, I'm hungry. Do me a favor and eat each other, will you?
Case in point, we get to see Penguin in this episode in the Iceberg Lounge, which is just a huge, lavish establishment. Now, the argument could be made that that does make legitimate money on its own, but still, I think that there's got to be some dirty money involved in the running of that business, I would assume.
Living well is the best revenge.
But also, speaking of the Penguin, this episode has kind of a neat element to it that they have a lot of little cameos from other villains. We see the Penguin, obviously, at the Iceberg Lounge. We've got Harley Quinn in the beginning and end of the episode. And while she's in Arkham, we see Poison Ivy. So there's some neat little cameos, and not just seeing these characters in the background, but they actually talk and have a voice in this.
Joker seeks new hench girl?
And this is actually the first time that we get to see Penguin in the episode. Once again, Penguin kind of gets the short end of the stick because he doesn't get to be featured in his own episode to start with, but he shares the episode with the Joker. But he gets some neat little moments in the episode throughout.
Delighted to have you in my humble nest.
I thought I'd take in the atmosphere.
Really, the part that stood out to me most about this episode is just how strange it was. I mean, honestly, it almost felt like this episode was more of a comedy, more of like in the style of Tiny Toons or Animaniacs than a real, true Batman sort of episode. Because there's just some weird stuff that happens. We got fake Harley.
Too small. Too old.
Which is kind of funny, but I don't know why they did this. They had Harley get locked up, and then Joker hires another Harley. So we have this scene of him trying to find a Harley replacement, and he finds somebody that looks just like her but has an annoying voice. More annoying a voice.
We've got a winner!
Oh, thank you, Mr. G.
And then we have another montage. This seems to be a trend with the New Adventures of Batman, is this montage of Joker spending all of his money and living a lavish lifestyle, which was odd. This all comes to an end for the Joker when the IRS shows up to try to collect inheritance tax.
Then you must realize, as Mr. Barlow's sole beneficiary, you owe us a tidy bit of inheritance tax.
I mean, I know that that's like actually true, that they were able to bust Al Capone and Mickey Cohen and that on tax evasion. But it just seemed odd in this episode, or in the animated world, the way that they're explaining taxes and the IRS. And I don't think kids probably would have got that as much as needed to, although I guess all they needed to know was that Joker owed a bunch of money to the government. And then there's the scene in the Iceberg Lounge where Batman is going to talk to the Joker, or Bruce Wayne. And you can tell he looks a little different, but sounds the same. And you find out he's just an actor that was hired to play the Joker so that Joker could pull this job and not and have an alibi that he was still at the Iceberg Lounge.
This is starting to get to me.
What? Should have used more makeup, Ernie.
So there was just a lot of those little weird kind of scenes that were sprinkled out throughout this episode. I don't think those necessarily made it bad. It was less of a mystery action kind of episode and more just kind of goofy comedy to me.
None of these yahoos are crazy enough to pull that old stunt.
And the other element to this episode, which I had to think back to the last couple of episodes, is that Robin hasn't been in these episodes. I know there was a big push in the original series to introduce Robin, and then eventually when it became the Batman and Robin Adventures, that the network was asking to have more Robin in the episodes, and in fact in every episode, to give a kid's perspective. And now they move to the WB, and although he's part of that, we have Tim Drake, which is a younger Robin even, but in the last couple episodes, he hasn't even been in the episodes. And we have Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, who's really kind of serving that sidekick role for Batman. It's really less about Batman and Robin and more Batman and Batgirl.
There's justice for you. Well, now that he's rich, maybe he'll give up crime. Right. I'll call Dick.
So when it comes time to rank this episode, it's fun. It's enjoyable to watch. But as far as the criteria of the episodes that I really enjoy, the kind of mystery, more story-driven episodes, this one is a little lacking. And I guess it makes sense for the Joker to kind of exist in this kind of episode, but for this being his first episode to be back and featured, just a lot of really weird, goofy stuff that's happening. So I ended up placing it at the number 6 spot of my favorite episodes. Just below Sins of the Father, because again, that is a origin episode, but the story is much more intriguing than in this. But it does beat out You Scratch My Back because there's certainly a lot more entertainment value offered in this episode than in that one.
Welcome to the club.
So if you agree with me that this episode is very strange and very weird, let me know what you think the weirdest part about this episode is. Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoy what I had to say about this episode, then give this video a like, thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, then just hit subscribe because I have new episodes coming out every Tuesday and Thursday, and you don't want to miss a single one. So hit subscribe, because next Tuesday, I have a new review coming out of Growing Pains. You don't want to miss that. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Andy Knode. I'll see you soon.